Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Maca Botta with us. Maca is co-founder at Brava, the startup we're gonna discuss today. She occupied various cool roles before. It's not her first startup either. She was the co-founder of Doctari Latam and a bunch of others that we're gonna discuss today. This podcast is brought to you by my podcasting company. It's called podpar.com if you want to start your podcast. And this supplement here, Qualia, it's a nootropic. So as some of you might know, one of my first company 10 years ago was a nootropic for the brain. And Qualia helps me keep concentrated and focus on a daily basis. It also helps with memory and just being more alive, sort of. So for that, you can go and check out Qualia on Google on the Neurohacker website. Maka, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Hello, Charles. I'm so happy to be here today in this conversation. Regarding myself, I can say I have the superpower of reinventing myself, and that enables me to get onto new adventures, create new startups, meet new people, and as always, learn new stuff. That I think that's what makes life amazing.
Tell me about your background because I see some corporate stuff here, Wells Fargo, 6 years. And then what brought you to the startup world?
Great question. Well, I was raised in a middle-class family in Uruguay, in which going to university is a privilege. I was able to start working very young, and guess what? I got a job at what was Prudential Financial, that then was Wachovia Securities, and then that have been Wells Fargo Advisors. Um, at university, I was taught or I was educated that the best thing that could happen to me was to work at Central Bank in Uruguay. I don't think that's a bad alternative, but for me, it's too boring. And then what happened is I worked almost 7 years actually, and then because of NYC crisis, they decided to close their branches here in Uruguay, and they left, and they gave me some money. With that money, I decided to invest it on a trip to Europe on my own, and that changed my life forever. In Uruguay, it's a small country in which you are taught to excuse yourself all the time. You need to explain where is Uruguay for a start. Now, thanks to Luis Suarez, kind of a lot of people know where Uruguay is, but still, and also we are all the time apologizing, like. And when I left the financial industry to start the first co-working space in Uruguay, my grandmother would say, Maquita, opening a company in Uruguay? You're crazy. And that's what I found out in my trip to Europe. I had the privilege or the opportunity to live in a country in which everything was to be done. And instead of going to Europe and staying there, finding a new job, I decided to come back and to build the first co-working space in Uruguay. That's the story. I also am very privileged in the sense that I could pay my own university. I studied economics. And while I was working in the financial industry, I was thinking that I was helping people that already had a lot of money to have more money. And like my question to myself was, isn't there another market or other places in which I can put all the tools, all my knowledge, all my journey to help other people build amazing stuff? And that's how I ended up in the entrepreneurial and startup world that makes me happy and enables me to choose every day who I want to be.
I think a bunch of founders and a bunch of people that's lives were changed. It was through traveling and exploring another part of our world. This is one of my main theses that as youngsters we need to leave the parental nest because it's too much safety for most of us when it's in the middle class specifically. Me, my life changed when I went to Hong Kong as a student and discovered I could work from a distance and make money from a distance. So yeah, fascinating that you got that too. Talking about co-working space, I remember working in a co-working space in Punta del Este where you're at right now. Why did you decided to launch that type of business? Was co-working spaces all the trend back then? It was the WeWork days. So, and was it a good business move from yours to start your own co-working space?
I love that question. I think, well, it was the WeWork area, but not that much, not in the peak. But it wasn't about that. It was much more about creating a space in which we can all get together. Uruguay is a very small country in which you may know a lot of people and it may be easy to network, but still, we need a place in which you can get together with an investor, meet a new person for your team, find somebody with an amazing idea, learn how to pitch an idea, and that we wouldn't have a place in Uruguay where to get together to meet each other. That was like the first why, because we needed it as entrepreneurs, the founders, we were 6 founders, but also we were brave enough to do it on our terms, because when we started having the conversation, it was the era of Impact Hub, I would say. It was the first one, the very big chain. I met Max Oliva by mistake on a hotel, like the kind of amazing things that happen when you start like opening up alternatives and opportunities. But we decided to do one with our culture, with our look and feel, like the Uruguayan co-work. And it's not because we don't want to be connected with the world. It's not about that. But we knew that our challenge wasn't to open a co-working space itself, but it was to create a culture to go to a co-working space. And that was the greatest challenge. And I think we did it in a very successful way. And I think the key for that was community, putting people in the center, having enough conversation with members to understand what they needed, what was lacking there on the space, what they can do for the space, in the sense that we were very clear about, if you're going to join our co-working space, this means you need to be available to contribute, to collaborate. And I think that make all the change.
Co-working spaces, they're also synonym with startups. The startup scene back then, was it starting to heat up? And how is the startup scene nowadays still these years, which were 10 years ago?
Exactly. Well, I would say like we have a very short story on entrepreneurial ecosystem in Uruguay. I would say it has like in the 90s, we had the first incubator and endeavor landed in Uruguay. Fortunately, it changed a lot, not only because here we have a lot of conditions regarding, I don't know, political, economic, we have a stable economy. Fortunately, we're in a very sexy position geographically in our region. A lot of people from abroad are coming here, but also we have a lot of talent. And you know what happens with Uruguay? Because it's a very small country, and that can be a disadvantage for other stuff. For these kind of things, it's very interesting because it's very easy to get to talk to the president, for example. And it sounds like incredible, but it's not that difficult. Now we have a lot of funds, a lot of VCs are looking into Latin America, and Uruguay seems to be a very sexy place where to land, where to attract talent, where to bring people all together. Also, I need to say that regarding the public sector, a lot of tools, a lot of funds, a lot of seed funds were released and launched. So now I always tell my students at university, we are living a unique moment in Uruguay in which starting up your company, it's not that difficult. You have funds, you have mentorship, you have programs, you have incubators. You may be able to connect with a VC or another incubator or accelerator company to go abroad to keep developing your product or your business. And that thing, I know because I've seen it, it's very new. Like for us now, it's a daily thing for young people. But the thing is, 20 years ago, talking about starting up a company, it's like telling my grandmother that I was leaving the financial industry to co-found the first co-working space in Uruguay. Something very crazy.
Yeah, I get the culture that you're coming from. I guess I had some of that too in Montreal, like in Quebec, we call it little bread, like most people, they will want to cut the tallest blade grass, the richest person. There won't be much support for that. We're very sort of close-minded, socialist type of people. That is, although in some regards we are more open-minded on the immigration level. Thank God, because we need immigration to grow the country. Now, I have questions regarding what came after the startup the co-working space for startups, Doctari Latam. Can you tell us a bit more about that one and what you learned from running Doctari Latam?
Definitely. First of all, I would say like this startup world, it turns into a lifestyle. Like once you are in, it's very difficult to get out. What happened with Synergia, it was very successful, still is. They have more than 11 locations. Now we have a co-living chain. But as always happens, they have this agency problem in which I was the only founder that was fully dedicated to the co-working and incubator space. And when we were talking about how to grow and how to attract investors, we weren't on the same page. And it was then when I decided to say, okay, guys, I'm very grateful for this experience. It was the best university ever, but I will give a step out of it so it can keep growing and developing. And in that sense, I met Omar, that I know him from university. They were talking about this telemedical platform, but I need to do a disclaimer. Telemedicine platform 2017, no pandemia. And in that sense, in that date, nobody would go to an online appointment that hasn't a very, very important hospital behind or something. So it was really very challenging. For me, I learned a lot. It was a very large founding team, people much older than me. And for me, it was the opportunity to lead from scratch to launching on the Play Store and the Apple Store, the development of a technological platform. And I learned a lot on that journey. What happened to me, it's like the medical industry or like the users on 2017 didn't have the digital skills that maybe they have today in those days. So what happened to me is say, hey, this is not a place where I can contribute that much. I still have some shares on Doctari. And to be very, very honest with you, those years were very difficult. It was very difficult for us to sell our platform. Of course, after pandemia, everything changed. Now they are attracting VCs, they are growing, they are incubated on Cubo in Brazil. So I really hope that the future of Doctari is very bright, but it was, and I think that's something very important. Arriving early or arriving late, it's the same at the end. And that's what effectively happened with Doctari. I would say that when I co-founded it, it was too early. But still, I learned a lot about it from it.
Interesting. Yeah, and I've seen that business model in various parts of Latam. One startup that I'm still in contact with in Chile. So quite interesting there. What happened there? Did you exited that one? Did you got acquired or was it a cold loss?
No, what I did is I like quit my job. I had a job as a project manager. I quit that job, but I still have some shares. So I'm being a little bit diluted with the years, but I still have a very small participation. That means that at least once a year, I will meet with the rest shareholders. I can be in some conversations. It was, I don't think, I feel I would have something back from it, but I think this also is very important. I would say that I may say that maybe Synergia was the best business regarding startup investment I did regarding financially. But I try to evaluate all my decisions and the time, because the only thing we have in our life is time. You were talking about health and when we started. We have only one life, only one health. So I tend to evaluate the results of my investments or startups regarding what I learned, what it meant for me, what was there for me. And for example, regarding Synergia, the financial result was amazing. But I can say that for me, the best of it was the experience, the network, the community, the visibility. That made me a very visible woman in Uruguay. I was like from one day for another. So I would do the same. If I go back with all my startups, I would do the same stuff I did.
Right. And then what I seen is that the social startup bug got a hold of you. You've always been into women entrepreneurship, which is quite interesting. That was in UN Woman, then Unclassify, and then finally Brava here. So explain what you do with Brava and why social entrepreneurship is important for you.
I love that question. What I learned in this startup world, it's like doing things with impact or without impact, it's almost the same job. It's about how you design, about your strategy, about your vision. I can say a lot of people helped me. I can tell that meeting amazing people and meeting like this we are doing with your podcast, a lot of people with their stories, they inspire me to go and take action of what I want to do. And I feel in this era, in the time, the era we are living, it's stupid not to do things with social impact. And I also believe that I'm very fortunate and privileged of all the tools I have, all the knowledge, all my journey. I had the possibility to study at Columbia Business School, at the London School of Economics. And I feel I have like a special commitment, not only to live a life I'm proud of, I enjoy every day, but also to spill over and create impact on others. You talked about Unplastify. I am on the board of directors. It's not my company, but I met them at Columbia and I very much like to contribute with them. They have a chapter in Uruguay too. And Brava, it's related with my personal story. I started Synergia, Doctari. You can say, okay, Maca, but come on, you study economics, you work, like you did everything you wanted, you made an exit, you earned some money, you reinvented yourself, you love the life you have. It sounds amazing, but it's not that easy. But still, the common denominator of all that journey is that I never realized, or I realized very old, that a lot of things that happened to me were because I was female, or I auto-perceive myself as a woman, you know? I tend to think this happened to me because I haven't prepared myself enough, or because I am too intense, I talk too much, or because I haven't studied, or I'm too young. And then I realized that it has a lot to do with my female condition. And that's why I say, okay, with all the tools I have to solve problems, because at the end, being an entrepreneur, it's about solving problems. I want to use all this knowledge in order to create solutions and opportunities for female. In that path, we started Brava as a female talent agency. Then you realize that if we only talk to women, we only work with women, we are addressing only half of the problem. Because if I want every girl and woman to design and live the life they want to live, I need that also men, boys can do the same. That's how Brava turned into a company that works with the corporate sector, the private sector, and how to land the gender and diversity perspective. And we did that by building an index, a measurement to manage gaps, gender gap, generational gap, position gap. We do that, we have a product, we go into the company, we measure, we take a real picture, we calculate correlations, a lot of stuff. It's very useful. At the end, what you see, it's like in one company, there are as many companies as people that work there because their perception is very different. And with that, we suggest an action plan.
Love that. I wish we would have more time, but yeah, already on time here. Where can people find out more about you and contribute to your fight and your revolution?
They can find me macabotta.com or Instagram, Twitter at macabotta, also at bravasomos.com. I'm very accessible. I always want to share a conversation because I think it's the only way we have to transform reality and to make things happen. Thank you, Charles, very much for having me today. I very much enjoy our conversation and I hope we keep in touch.